name is Dale Tafoya, and joining me today is former A's catcher Mike Heath. Mike played for the A's from 1979 to 1985 before being traded to the Cardinals in a deal that brought Joaquin Andujar to Oakland after the 1985 season and after Andujar's outburst during the 1985 World Series. Mike played for Billy Martin all 3 years in Oakland from 1980 to 1982 and was in Oakland before, during, and after Billy Ball. Mike, thanks for joining me from Florida today, and hope you're staying safe during this new world we're living in now.
Thanks, Dale. Yes, everything seems to be okay, just kind of hunkering in place, but I hope everybody is well out there.
Thank you, Mike. Tell me about your first experience with Billy Martin when you broke in with the Yankees as a 23-year-old catcher in 1978 after they called you up from Double-A West Haven.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a funny story. So I enter into the Yankee clubhouse and all and everything, being able to set foot in where some of the greatest players ever played the game are at that point. And in the past. And so I'm sitting around my locker. Pete Sheehy, which was a clubhouse guy at the time, showed me my locker with my name on it. It was awesome. So I sat at my locker, just taking everything in, and I hear this loud voice coming from this room, and they were discussing stuff, and it was like, I don't need no rookie catcher at this point in this part of the season. I need this, that, and the other pitching, or I need this. I don't need no rookie catcher. So basically, that was the end of the loud speaking at that point, and a bunch of people walked out of this room. Obviously, it was the press and all that. And then a few minutes later, Billy comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'm glad you're here. We could really use you at this point in this season." So it was obviously Billy was the one kind of making that noise, but I think later on as it went, especially the years with Oakland, he and I had a great relationship.
Right. Can't wait to talk about that soon in this interview. And the Yankees, Mike, they eventually traded you to Texas after the 1978 season. But as you mentioned to me before, Jim Sundberg was there, and he was catching 150 games a year. And you requested to be sent down to the minors, but the Rangers traded you to the A's, and you were traded for John Henry Johnson. What did you think about the A's in 1979, and how did you react to that trade? You kind of just switched clubhouses in the minors, from what I understand.
That's correct. It was what happened in spring training. I can't remember the GM's name at this point, but Eddie Robinson came to me and said, "Hey, congratulations, you made the team." And I said, "Well," as in the Texas Rangers. And I said, "Well, Eddie, I just started catching. I would love to go down to AAA so I can catch every day. Jim Sundberg's going to catch 150 games a year, and I'll be sitting the bench." And he basically said, "Is that what you want to do?" I said, "Yeah, I just need to perfect my skills." And so he signed the paper for me to go to AAA, but little did he know at that point, he used my last option to be up in the big leagues. In other words, if they called me back up if Sundberg got hurt, I'd have to clear waivers at that point, and there's no way I would clear waivers. So he sent me down to AAA in Tucson.
Mm-hmm. And you're a really hot prospect catcher in the minors. And when you report to the A's, and when the A's called you up in 1979, A's manager Jim Marshall played you in the outfield and some third base that season, correct?
That's correct. The first time meeting Jim Marshall, we're in the dugout, and he comes up to me and says, "Have you ever played the outfield?" And I told him, "Oh yeah, I played quite a bit, man. That was my other position, running around end to infield." And he says, "Well, you're starting left fielder tomorrow." I said, "Okay." So this is how Dwayne Murphy, not Dale Murphy, but Dwayne Murphy, he is my best friend in baseball. he was sitting there, and he's our center fielder. If everybody remembers him, he has 6 straight Golden Gloves with Oakland.
Absolutely.
He comes up to me, he says, "You never played the outfield before?" And I said, "Yeah, no, I haven't, only in high school." He goes, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of you. Just follow my lead." And so that's how that started.
Right. And Dwayne Murphy, he was the A's first captain since Sal Bando in the early 70s. I mean, what was his? He must have been a great leader, Dwayne Murphy, if he was the captain.
Yeah, he was the type of guy who was a quiet leader, but he led by example. Led by example on and off the field. When things were going a little astray, he'd talk to guys, but he wasn't a boisterous guy. But he had a lot of clout with all the guys because we respected him. And like I said, I can't say enough about him. He's my best friend, and we still stay in contact today. And he was definitely our captain of that ball club.
Wow. And when I interviewed you for the book last year, you told me a great story, Mike, of bumping into Billy Martin in 1979 or around there at the Edgewater Hyatt House in Oakland, the hotel headquarters where American League clubs stayed, and the Raiders would hang out at that spot. The Raiders would hang out. And you approached him at the bar, and that's when he hinted that he would be managing the A's in 1980. How did that unfold, Mike?
Yeah, it was after a game. We went in there and had a drink and everything, and I went up to Billy and I said, "Hey, Billy, Mike Heath," I said, "I just want to thank you for, I really love playing for you, and I enjoyed playing for you." And he said, "Mike, I know who you are." He says, "You're going to be playing for me sooner than what you think." Is basically what his line was.
Right. And I've heard a lot of players tell me about that first spring training in 1980 when Billy arrived in Scottsdale to take over the A's. Charlie Finley had just hired Billy a day before A's pitchers and catchers were scheduled to report to spring training. I believe it was February 21st, 1980. What was it like? Players tell me about that first spring training. Billy got there in Scottsdale and just shook the team up and injected confidence in that young group. What was it like to see Billy just inject that confidence in that group of young players right away?
Well, we were a bunch of young guys ready to pop as far as, being able to play good baseball and compete in the American League West. Mm-hmm. And he gave us that confidence. And one of the biggest things I think that Billy did, of course, his clout of who he was as a manager, but he brought a great coaching staff with him and a lot of guys that we respected.
Right. And you talk about the coaches. He had Lee Walls, George Mitterwald. He brought over Art Fowler. The next year, he brought in Jackie Moore. What made the chemistry so good on that A's coaching staff, Mike?
Well, you forget. There was a couple more, but you forget one important guy was Clete Boyer.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right.
He was our third base coach, and they knew the game inside out, man. The old players, which I'm going to characterize our era in there, we watch tendencies of players. I don't think guys do that today very much. I think it's all done by video and the coaches watch it, but Clete taught us a lot about, watching tendencies of players, and we watch guys, how they make their moves and what to set up. And they taught us a lot in that aspect about watching defensive players or offensive players and what their moves are going to be and what they're kind of thinking in their head. So, yeah, it was a great time. I mean, also later on with the A's, we had Harmon Killebrew, and Eddie Matthews also was one of the hitting guys with Billy. It was awesome.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned Clete Boyer because when Billy got there, Billy wanted to make when Billy got to Oakland, he wanted to make Clete Boyer his successor if he ever left. It didn't work out, but that just goes to show you how much Billy Martin valued Clete Boyer.
That's correct. Yeah, Clete he was very important as our third base coach, and he and Billy were on the same page as certain things as far as the way to run the game, and actually Billy could just give him a look from the dugout, and Clete knew what was going on.
Right.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially on the base pass, and we'll get into that soon. The 1979 A's, Mike, lost 108 games, and they drew only about 307,000 fans. Billy suddenly comes in, led the A's to a second place finish in the division, and tripled attendance in 1980. They suddenly went from 307,000 in 1979 to almost 900,000 in 1980. And Billy's aggressiveness really made the A's a team known for a lot of trickery, hidden ball tricks, double and triple steals. The A's starting pitchers completing complete games. How did you see Billy just spark that club into a winning team?
Well, we didn't have a team that was gonna. We weren't like the Boston Red Sox that relied on the three-run homer all the time. We had the manufacturer runs, and that's what Billy knew about this ball club. He knew, we're going to hit a home run here and there. We're going to do that, but we had legs on the base passes. We had guys that, in today's game, they shift everybody over. You couldn't do that to that Oakland ball club back then because we would hit it one way or the other. I mean, so if you looked at our charts would be fanned out instead of clumped in one area. So Billy knew how to take advantage of all that, and what he knew most of it, he knew exactly what our ability was as an offensive player and as a defensive player. So he really added a lot of spark to that. He knew that if you missed a bunt with and got to two strikes, he knew with me he could put the bunt on it and I'd still get it down. That's what confidence he had in me.
Right. And what's really what intrigued me about this story, Mike, was not only how Billy's arrival, how it translated in the standings in wins, but it was the attendance. Fans in Oakland, fans all over the Bay Area, they started to come and fill that Coliseum. As I mentioned, in 1980, the A's drew 842,000. 1981, the A's drew 1.3 million under Billy Martin. And Mike, that's minus 22 home dates because of the strike. The A's were on pace to draw 2.2 million in 1981 if it wasn't for the strike. And in 1982, really a bad year, the A's drew 1.7 million. It goes from 307,000 in 1979 to 1.7 million in 1982. And you were there. What was it like to see fans starting to pour back into that Coliseum?
Well, I'm going to go back to '79. Yeah, we had terrible attendance because we didn't win. Our stadium would have only 1,000 people in it, and then when Boston comes in or the Yankees came in, it'd be 30,000 people rooting against us.
Right.
So Billy being from basically the Bay Area, and he comes in there and we start winning, people love a winner. I mean, that is the way. If you want fans in the stands, you got to win ball games. And they think that today that, they can do all this publicity stuff and all this, that, and the other. But you put a winning product on the field, and it's very difficult to do for some organizations. But that will put the people in the stands. And it was just having Billy there and us winning, and now everybody's rooting for us and booing the Yankees and booing Boston, and we loved it.
Right. And in 1981, of course, Mike, the A's got off to that best start in baseball history. The A's were at 11-0 and eventually shot to 17-1 and 20-3 that season. In April, the A's 5 starting pitchers were on the front cover of Sports Illustrated, and Billy Martin graced the front cover of Time magazine in May that season. The Oakland Coliseum was suddenly electric, and Billy Martin juiced the area and really made the A's into a pop culture phenomenon. Writers from all over the country started coming to Oakland to cover the story. The A's owned the front page at the start of that 1981 season. I mean, what was it like playing in that supercharged atmosphere?
Well, it's definitely electrifying, that's for sure. I mean, I'm going to step back just a little bit. So if you go to the 1990 Atlanta Braves, terrible. You go to the 91 Braves and start winning, they go from worst to first. And that's basically what the Oakland A's did. And, 79, 80, 80, 81. So, it was just electrifying whenever you get a team out there that we knew we were pretty good as young players, and you get a manager that brings us all together. And now the Bay Area, it was a great place to live for me back in the time there, because everybody loved the A's, man. We were on fire, and we had a lot of respect throughout the baseball world, and we were pretty proud of the achievement that we accomplished as a ball club.
Yeah, Mike, what did you learn about Oakland A's fans and living in that area during all that time? You had Billy Ball's bumper stickers all over Oakland, all over billboards. He was like the face of the franchise back then. What did you learn about Oakland fans?
Crazy George is crazy.
Right. He's still around too.
Yeah, I heard that. I saw him not too long ago, a couple years ago. It was very nice seeing him.
In fact, he told me you were his favorite player, Crazy George. Yeah, he told me that.
I remember one time he was banging and getting everybody going. He leaned over and looked in the dugout. He said, "You're crazier than I am." But the Oakland fans, it is very difficult simply because there is so much to do in the Bay Area back then. Mm-hmm. In the weekends you could go off and go to Tahoe, or you could go to the beaches. There's so much to do in the area, but they have thrived over the years with the Raiders and the 72-3-4 Oakland A's, mm-hmm. and they were just thirsty and waiting for another Oakland A team to catch fire. And still today you get fans that you run across every once in a while that lived in Oakland and just are excited about the years with Billy Ball.
Right. And you talked about the Raiders. During that Billy Ball era, those 3 years, the Raiders were on the verge of moving to Los Angeles. Were the A's and Raiders hanging out during that time? Did you see a lot of Oakland Raiders while you're playing for the A's?
Well, saw Matuzak a couple times and Lester Hayes a little bit. Well, we see those guys occasionally. There weren't too many of the guys that I remember coming to the games and watching us, mm-hmm. that I remember.
Right.
But you'd run into Matuzak. Of course, I've known Matuzak when he was at the University of Tampa. Mm. And he was an intern at our high school at the time, too. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember him back in the days because I am from Tampa area.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we ran across them occasionally, yes.
Yeah. And you and I talked before, Mike, about how Billy, when he got to Oakland, he just made a bunch of young kids who were used to playing in front of hundreds of fans in Oakland. He made these young kids, Ricky Henderson, Dwayne Murphy, Mike Norris, these young kids believe they can win. And to this day, a lot of them are still very loyal to Billy. As I interviewed different players, can you talk to me about that loyalty to some players that they still have for Billy?
Yes, you're always going to get a few that Billy probably rubbed them the wrong way, but you know what? I mean, that's their bad as far as I'm concerned. But most of us guys, all the guys you talked about, we speak highly of Billy and how much knowledge that he told us and taught us, and he respected us as players, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, we earned it. We earned Billy's respect by going out there and playing hard and doing exactly what he thought this team could do. So we earned Billy's respect.
Right. And what was it like to play under Billy? You said you earned his respect. Can you touch on that? What was he looking for? I know loyalty was very, very important to Billy. What was he looking for? What were his expectations for each player on the A's?
Well, he wanted no excuses. Mm-hmm. I mean, you go out there and you don't play unless you can't get out there and you broke and I got a broken bone come out, then you can come out. But he didn't like this thing about, well, I'm tired today. Well, I got a sore this. We never talked about that. We went out there because we had pride in ourselves as players, Mm-hmm. And I think Billy saw us going out there adapting to the style he wanted us to play, or he knew that we could play at, or the level, and that's how we gained his respect. Nobody cried.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody complained about anything. We get between the white lines. It's all about the players.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we had a close knit. It was. I tell you what, that team. It was one of the best close knit teams I've ever been on as a little bit of a veteran player. That in Detroit, and we all got along. I mean, we all of us got along. Didn't matter what color you were, what nationality you were. We were a tight group bunch of guys, and I love that Oakland A team.
Yeah. Speaking of just the ownership as well, Mike, I know Charlie Finley owned the team, and during the middle of that 1980 season, in August, the Haas's are in the picture. The Walter A. Haas purchased the team and keeps the A's in Oakland. And the Haas's they kept the A's in Oakland. They wanted to preserve the A's in Oakland. And Mr. Haas believed a professional sports team unify a community. What was it like to see the Haas's take over, and how did they transform and take the A's to a whole nother level?
Well, I totally agree with that. If you have a winning product on the field, it can unify the community. And we had guys going out in the community and speaking and doing things too. So the Haas family really gave the area a shot in the arm. I mean, it was to the generation of baseball players that free agencies were a big thing, and you're going to get some to help your ball club. And the Haas family was really great on helping our ball club and what we needed. And they just gave us a shot in the arm, new owners. Charlie Finley was great in his era, one of the charismatic owners of the time, but time passed him. It was time to move on. And the Haas family really, really did a fine job with the organization.
Right.
But I am still not one of these guys that get involved with what the owners do or what this does and all that.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many guys that pay attention to that a lot, and I really didn't pay attention to that at all.
Yeah. In 1982, Mike, it was Billy's final season managing the A's, and it was a rough season that started in spring training. And you were there, of course. There were over 100 players in that crammed spring training in Phoenix. I'm sure you remember. Billy invited kind of the entire farm system to the big league camp that year, and there was also historic rainfall that spring. And A's players, including some starting pitchers, left spring with only maybe a dozen innings under their belts. How did you see that season unfold, Mike?
Well, it didn't really bother me as much as the minor league guys there, but some guys possibly shouldn't have been there. But the biggest factor in that spring training, we were in Phoenix, and like you said, it rained. I mean, like you said, only a dozen. I think Mike Norris came out of spring training with 12 or 17 innings, game situations under his belt. We had no indoor facilities, so nobody could get to work pitching off of mounds. There was nothing there. Mm-hmm. And these guys today in baseball got us so lucky because these complexes are state-of-the-art everything. We didn't have all that back in the day. So when the season started, guys weren't really in shape as far as pitching staff. And they tried to pitch themselves in shape, and I think that's a big downfall because of the injuries that we had. And they wanted to stay in there, and they wanted to finish the games and go a little longer. And I think they tried to pitch themselves in shape instead of get themselves in shape in spring training, which was the lack of games and stuff because of all the rainfall and no indoor facilities.
Right. Yeah, we mentioned the A in 1982. The A's were 68-94. With a fifth place finish. They drew 1.7 million fans that season. That turned out to be Billy's last season. During the 1982 World Series, the A's fired Billy, and he was able to return to the Yankees again to manage the 1983 Yankees. How did you see Billy's departure there as a player?
Well, it was I thought it was difficult for a lot of the players. we hated to see him go, but I guess circumstances led to that he had to go, and I really don't know what they are. I have no clue. Well, I think the A's were supposed to pay his taxes or something. They didn't,
right?
Whatever.
Yeah.
But it got to be a sad note. I'll never forget that when he got fired, it was after a game, and Clete Boyer came to myself, Steve McCaddy, and Dwayne Murphy, and told us that Billy had been fired, and that Billy wanted to talk to all three of us, and we had to wait around till it all cleared out. So about 6:30, we get called into Billy's office, and Billy was pissed. I mean, stuff was off his desk, and pictures were on the floor, but a picture of him and Mickey Mantle was still on the wall behind him. And he just told us the whole story, and he told us he went to each one of us as all three of us are sitting there and told us how he felt about each of us, Steve McCaddy, Dwayne Murphy, and myself. And he just wanted to tell us that, he wishes us luck, and, he had confidence in us, and he told us a lot of good things. And then after that, we exited the clubhouse, and it was quite the honor that he called us three in there, especially, myself, and talked to me and told me how much he respected me and how he seen me grow up as a young player to where I was today.
Right. And you told me when I spoke to you before that Billy could sometimes be hard on catchers, but he was trying to teach you the game as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you touch on that a little bit, Mike?
Well, he would. From what I'm understanding, I don't think Sundberg liked him too well when he was with Texas, but I was the type of guy that I don't know, if he said something that I didn't like, I'd tell it right back to him, and he and I might get in an argument or whatever. But then afterwards, he called me in his office. He says he says you're a ox of rocks back there, but he says, you know what? I love you. I love you as a player. I love your attitude. So, yeah, I mean, every once in a while, but I knew that Billy and I could have our discussion, and it was, it was over. I didn't carry a grudge. He didn't carry a grudge with me, and I think some guys, once Billy started getting on them, they probably carried a grudge towards him, which I didn't. I learned from Billy. I didn't carry no grudge. I love the guy.
Mm-hmm. Right. And last question, and thank you for joining me, Mike, on the show here. In December 1989, a few months after the A's won the World Series championship, in fact, in 1989, with the Bash Brothers era, and they had a nice run there, Billy Martin passed away on an icy road on the East Coast. Do you recall where were you at when you heard the news that Billy passed?
I do not.
Mm-hmm.
Sad to say, I cannot give a correct answer to that, but it was very sad for me at that point hearing that.
Right, yeah. Okay, Mike.
Can I end in one story?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike.
I was, when Billy left and he went to the Yankees in '83, so, I knew as a catcher, I knew that Billy liked doing certain things as a manager, especially offensively. So I'll never forget, bases were loaded, and I was catching with Oakland, and I can't remember who it was, hit a triple that unloaded the bases for the Yankees. And the fans are going wild in the Yankee Stadium. But me, as playing for Billy as a catcher, I knew what he'd like to do, especially if the next batter came up and the batter could bunt. Billy would always call a squeeze bunt in that situation. He used to do it with us in Oakland. So me as a catcher, knowing this, I'm thinking, he wants to keep the crowd going to get that extra run in. And so the first pitch, I called the pitch out because Billy would do it right then on the first pitch. I pitched out, nothing happened. I threw back the ball to the pitcher. I look over at Billy, and Billy is pointing his finger at me going, no, 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 no. He exactly knew what I was going to do, I think. And 2 pitches later, he called the squeeze.
Wow.
So I looked over at him, and he was shaking his finger at me. So that was pretty funny, and he was laughing, and I started laughing back at him.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you had some great memories here in Oakland, and reflecting on the Billy Ball era. Any other memories you want to leave us with about this magical Billy Ball run in the early '80s in Oakland?
Oh, there's a lot of stories we can get into, but the Bay Area, Oakland, I truly love the Bay Area, the Danville area. I loved it when I was out there. I had a great sense about me. I felt good. I wish I could have been an Oakland A forever, but, Terry Steinbach was right there coming up, and he was a great catcher. But the Bay Area, I love the Bay Area, and it's one of my favorite places I've ever visited and lived in my whole lifetime, and it's great out there.
All right. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining me to talk Billy Ball and some A's history. Be safe there, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Okay, guys. Thank you, Dale.